Good. Let's get this going. So here's what you need to know basically about TrumpRx. TrumpRX.gov is essentially kind of like your, I don't know, it's a medication saving standpoint. It's all about mostly people who want to spend cash to go ahead and buy their medications for a cheaper amount. It's basically putting a lot of pressure on these pharmaceuticals to go ahead and produce these medications in a purchasable manner, in a cheap alternative way. And so what it does is it basically gives people more power when it comes to buying drugs at a reduced price, especially for those who have ridiculously high insurance costs. And, just to be fair with how things have been moving, things in the medical field just kept getting more and more expensive and out of control. So the bottom line is Trump is basically creating his own version of GoodRx, his own version of Mark Cuban's website system, and he's promoting it. But the only kicker with that is that the people who control the pharmaceutical industry control it through a billion upon billion upon trillion dollar, really tight knuckled grasp. And so the main problem that Trump's going to be having to deal with in the future is that he's making a lot of big money enemies. Now, you have to remember, when the American people do well, rich people tend to go into attack mode, right? The families that own everything, the families that basically want to, go ahead and control food, veterinarian treatment, food for pets, right? Car products, housing products, etc. When you go and make it better for the average American, usually, almost always, you see a very big situation where the super rich will go into attack mode. Now, all right, what does TrumpRx do? Because a lot of people don't know what this is. I'm going to give a real quick summary. That way you're fully on board with exactly what it is. It's basically the largest reduction in prescription drug prices in history for a lot of the options that are available, which is awesome. And here's some quotes about it. TrumpRx is rewriting the script, bringing major savings on essential medications for all Americans. That's from the official website. Starting tonight, dozens of the most commonly used prescription drugs will be available at dramatic discounts for all consumers throughout a new website. It's called TRUMPRX.GOV. TrumpRx is going to change millions of lives. That's from the White House Instagram post. Quote, "We'll work with TrumpX. I mean, it's incredible. It's stupendous. It's like the most incredible program ever." That's Mark Cuban, which is surprising because he was deep in with the Harris team. Next one, these are against basically TrumpRx, right? These are the quotes against it. "If you have insurance, your out-of-pocket costs are probably going to be less than the discounted list prices that's being advertised on TrumpRx." That was Juliet Kubanski, Deputy Director of the Program on Medicare Policy at KFF. I'm going to disagree with that individual on that. Quote, "This is not exactly lowering drug prices. It steers consumers to the existing drug company programs for uninsured patients that have been around for a while." That's from, quote, Anthony Wright, Executive Director of Families USA. And that is true to some degree, but it is cutting out a lot of middle people, which should over time save significant money. Quote, "TrumpRx won't help most Americans because it is designed for cash-paying, uninsured patients rather than the roughly 85% of Americans with prescription drug insurance coverage." That's from the experts in Stat News. Yeah, so just to be fair, a lot of you don't realize, but more and more people are getting forced off of essentially traditional insurance. And as a result of being forced off of traditional insurance because they can't afford it, even if it's something like Medicare, a lot of people just can't afford the basics of Medicare, right? A lot of people have to switch to a Medicare Advantage plan, stuff like that, to see what's going to be more customized and work better for them. But at the end of the day, a perfect example right here. I used to pay, it got up to $1,200 a month, $1,200 a month until finally I said, F it. I'm not paying this anymore. This is basically like I could have a mortgage on a shitty, house at this point for the cost of my health insurance. So I went onto the marketplace and I got one of those it wasn't the silver or the gold. It was one of those like bronze plans or whatever. And, but still it was expensive. Still like $450 something. But the bottom line is most people and that's what kind of pisses me off about a lot of these like nonprofit sort of oriented, community, we're going to make a statement groups. They focus on only those people they interact with. They don't focus on what the future is going to be. And the future, just to be very clear, is not going to be whatever we have right now because it's not affordable. right? The young can't afford to pay for all the old people's Medicare at this point. They can't. And all the young can't even afford private insurance. Most of them can't even afford marketplace insurance. So just to be kind of clear with this situation, this is one of those spots where I think a lot of people are not using their brain to officially recognize where this entire industry is going. Healthcare as a total industry is moving towards a cash pay system. That's the entire direction of this entire thing. Some of you will say, that's horrible. How could they? Da, 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 da. It's very simple. The young people working can't afford to pay for other people's health insurance anymore. And while prior generations have received health insurance and then newer generations paid for it, right? Because you never get, when you get your retirement benefit, when you get your Medicare benefit, that's for the most part not you paying for it, other than the Medicare where you got the monthly. That's for the most part a prior generation, the next generation is going to be paying for what you have. Okay. And they can do that because people live long enough, right? You have an entire generation of workers, an entire generation of receivers, right? So the bottom line is, just so that everybody's on the same understanding, everybody that is on the same understanding as to what the problem is at the end of the day, okay? The entire system of insurance is moving to a cash-based system, okay? My generation, the millennials, Gen Zs, everybody below, they are not going to be paying into an insurance system. They're not going to be doing the Obamacare in the future. It is not affordable. It's just not. It's just not. If the cheapest I can get for health insurance is $450 something without dental, right, then it's just not a doable thing. It's just not. Okay. So a lot of these people, here's another one, quote, Trump's drug pricing initiative is a sham. That's from Topher Spiro, senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. It's just these people in these nonprofits and these community like push programs, they don't get it. Like they're like, you got to fix it so that it works exactly as it was. And as it, we're never going back to that. Like, that's the thing with the people that are like, retirement's going to be the same, nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. Those people are idiots. Because they don't understand that we are moving away from a traditional Social Security system. The young can't afford the old anymore. And then the old are saying, well, I paid mine. You paid for the prior generations when it was much cheaper. And now it's much more expensive because every generation we have shittier politicians that keep making it more expensive to pay for the same shit we had. Also, the dollar keeps devaluing, which is why I say it always amazes me when poor people vote for people that will make them poorer. When you get a person that like stands up in front of the room and goes, we just want to go back to the original agreements under the Obama era. We just want to go back to the original agreements and, have the same trade agreements and, blah, 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 blah. Let me assure you, okay, the most important thing to your benefits, your health insurance, your retirement, your disability, your supplemental security income, your widows, your survivors, the most important thing to your benefits is not the working middle class. It is not how well you spend your money. It is not how much you know about how the system works. All of those, not even close to the top one. The most important factor for your benefits in the immediate sense, number one, international trade with use of the US dollar as a reserve currency by other nations. Number two, fertility rates. That's more the long-term one. Although it's not anymore because there haven't been enough children continuously being born. So to be fair, like, a lot of people are like, I want to vote for the one that just makes other countries love us. Well, then you're going to be effing over everybody. And that's like the weird thing that I guess I'm just over it. I've just gotten to the point where I'm just like, you know what? So many people are so stupid that there's no way you can fix it. You can't fix it at this point. There's too many Americans that never had an economics class. There's too many Americans that don't understand what international trade is. There's too many Americans who don't understand how the dollar works. There's too many Americans that are voting to give voting power to immigrants that haven't been naturalized. I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed by that. Some people will argue it's a culture thing. Some people will argue this, and then some people scream at them that they're racist and yada, yada. But to be fair, the way this works, just so that everybody has a better understanding, just so that everybody has a basic understanding of this, okay? At the end of the day, If other countries don't have good international agreements with the US to buy US dollars to purchase things and take out loans, you will all have a failed existence. Oh, it won't be that bad. No, let me explain. If the dollar goes through another one of the Biden eras, another Biden era 4 years of Bidenomics, if the dollar does that, you won't be able to afford food. You won't be able to afford housing. Even if it's a Section 8 situation, they'll have to, reprogram the entire thing. When we were living in that 4 years of Biden, every month felt like an inflation year from how it used to be. Inflation used to be 0.5, 1.0, 2.0, 2.5, right? But then the Biden era, it was, every month we were hitting an inflation month increase of what it used to feel like on a yearly inflation increase. So it's just frustrating because, at the end of the day, I see it's always the same thing. It's the poor voting for people who are going to make them more poor. It's like, we're going to do this, and then they don't do it. And the money magically, if the money was there, it magically ends up in the pockets of somebody else. Like, I can count. I'm going to do a video on that. I'm going to do it. It's going to piss off a bunch of people, but I can count at least 5 programs in my brain that I know that were supposed to go through, that were funded by and through Biden's administration, that were supposed to help the American people, where the money disappeared. So I guess I'm just at this point where, I don't know. I'm just at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I've had it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of watching them basically play these games with us because we can't afford it anymore. Like, all the student loan people, we can't afford it, right? All the people who basically have jobs that pay them this minuscule amount, we can't afford it like that. It's just not plausible anymore. So, just understanding that, it is what it is, but, we'll kind of go from there. All right. So good. Okay, let's see what we got here. All right. So I'm just getting a quick text real quick. Okay, so here we go. So let's go through this real quick. What is the program doing so far? TRUMPRX 2026 discounted prescription drug program. Pretty simple and straightforward. Platform deals were negotiated by the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. They basically communicated and negotiated with the pharmaceutical giants, ensuring U.S. consumers pay no more than the traditional international benchmarks, which is good because other nations were getting all these drugs for way cheaper than Americans. Americans had to pay a ridiculously high amount, including those on Medicare. It's unlike private discount services like GoodRx, which is one that pretty much most people use. It's government backed. That's the main difference. It is, of course, free to use. Of course, GoodRx is as well. About 43 drugs with plans to expand to 100 by mid-year are already on it. Basically, it's a minimalist site that has a lot of, it's actually not minimalist. It's hyper automated, but it seems minimalist to the person that interacts with it because it gets a lot of stuff real time. It gets like competitive drug market prices. It gets, availability, and it's able to link up with local facilities, local pharmacies and stuff like that. So it seems minimalist, but when you use it, when you click around on it, a lot of the stuff is hyper automated. And that's a sign of a good program. When you don't have to do much and it does a lot of stuff automatically, that's a very good sign of it. Now, the next thing is this. Basically, all right, so search results will display, you go in, you search, what products are there, what drugs are there. So, if you want to go ahead and see if one of the drugs you use is there, please go there, TRUMPRX.com. There's a search bar. Ozempic drops from $1,000 to $350 monthly. Basically, no login is required. The platform uses session-based tracking for privacy. So each time you go there as a session, right, it's using that session as opposed to a continuous login. So there's no HIPAA issues and stuff like that. So that's how they got around the whole HIPAA thing. It can generate coupons. It can go ahead and, basically have it set up where it checks local pharmacies. Has basically coupons that are valid for 90 days once they're printable. Redeemable at over 60,000 participating pharmacies nationwide. Basically, there are direct links for e-commerce portals for home delivery. That's direct links for, having drugs shipped to you. I think if it's over $50, you get free shipping. So in other words, it's a massive, major step in the right direction, using what the Trump administration or the Biden administration negotiated towards having these pharmaceutical companies drop their drug prices. So it is a very, very good thing. Has a mobile app, does real-time inventory checks to prevent stockouts, which is where a pharmacy will run out of a particular particular drug, alerting users to the nearest availability for the drug that they need within a 10-mile radius. Now, look, all this stuff, it empowers the insured, basically, who want to get a drug cheaper for some reason. If there's some weird copay this or yada yada that, and they need to get it, it empowers them. But mostly, it empowers the uninsured. Around 28 million Americans can now use a cash pay lifeline to go ahead and get some sort of medication without having to have a charity-based system. Okay, so just to be clear with this situation, that's kind of the goal here. Now, with that said, all right, just to kind of understand this real quick, there are drug companies that are not going to want to participate with this. They are limiting the way that they interact with it because at the end of the day, they want to make massive profits like they always have. That's just the way it is. And, you can't blame the drug companies because they're a company. They're an American company. Sometimes they're not, but, they, basically exist within the U.S. doing what they do, and they want to go ahead and profit as much as they can. This is going to make very, very large, aggressive enemies of Trump. Now, will Trump be able to work a deal? Maybe. But in my opinion, this is going to be one of those things where when it comes to midterms, when it comes to his reelection, I foresee, since the Democrats tend to be a weaker negotiating party, that the pharmaceuticals will throw a lot of money and weight towards having Democrats win in the midterm. Let me give you an example. So when pharmaceuticals don't get something that they want, and they don't want TRUMPRX.GOV, they don't want that. They want to control things away from the government, demanding that they do certain things at certain times. So, pharmaceuticals, they like to control things because then they can charge more. The basic game. They're not going to sell you a cure. They're going to sell you continuous repetitive medication so that you have to keep paying for it. No surprise there. Everybody knows that. That's the basic gig. Money, profit, that's how it works, okay? So at the end of the day, pharmaceuticals are probably going to try and file suit against Trump at some point, saying that the lack of profits they have is going to slow down and reduce the ability of them to go ahead and find, build, and test new drugs. Also, they're probably going to go ahead and lobby Congress to limit the scope of TRUMPRX.GOV because they want to limit it to, these pharmaceuticals to just the drugs that have been around for a while, that are easy to produce. There's not much more when it comes to, having to figure out and innovate on those drugs. However, to be fair, some of these drugs, right, at the end of the day, they want to go ahead and make a lot of money on. These drugs that are kind of newer, that have better capacity to go ahead and, deal with issues and things like that, that are, really unique, new, innovative drugs. Well, those in particular, those haven't been added to TRUMPRX.GOV, and they're probably not going to be added for a while. And so the idea here is that looks like pharma spent over $28 million on lobbying in 2025 alone so far. So, they're going to spend a lot of money. And it looks like Trump has been moved, or his administration has been modified in the direction of doing what the pharmaceuticals wanted him to do. Because in 2017, there was a 5-point plan to shape drug pricing that came from the pharmaceutical side of things, and he did incorporate that into it. So can Trump essentially be moved by the pharmaceutical companies? Absolutely. Multi-billion-dollar system. He's either going to lean a little bit with their direction, or he's going to face basically a lot of very difficult situations with not having money to get Republicans in for the midterms or the next presidential election. Now, with that said, I think at the end of the day, they might file a lawsuit. And the lawsuit that they could potentially file would be like a trade restriction type of lawsuit, where they were restricted in their ability to trade beyond the constitutional allowance because the government stepped in too much to try and, basically turn these medications into a utility. Now, as you know, the government, with a lot of things, when they take over it and they try to go ahead and create a utility, the basic function is, at the end of the day, they will go ahead and take over it, make things cheaper, and treat it like a utility. And then basically private organizations, corporations won't be able to go ahead and, to be fair, take as much advantage of it for profit purposes. I think they may try that as a tactic because obviously this TrumpRx website is going to significantly reduce the profits for these more common medications to these pharmaceutical companies. So I think he's going to have an issue there. I think the enemy is very rich and is going to be going after him. Now, I think there's another thing too. I think that they're going to slow roll how many medications they put onto this website. I think that they're going to keep all of their more unique, more expensive ones off of it. And I think that once they get the basic simple medications on there, you're going to see a lot of walls going up for future medications to be posted. I don't think you'll ever see innovation medications within the next 5 years on that list. Medications that are just coming out that have real cutting edge CRISPR level technology in them. You're just not going to see that stuff probably going up on the Trump RX website for a while. Okay. Now, I want to just kind of go through this particular item as well. The big thing is that overall, everybody's not doing financially well. Overall, except some particular groups, right? So some major companies, Walmart, they're doing great, right? Pharmaceuticals, they used to be doing great. But what's happening is we're starting to chip away at the pharmaceutical company's ability to make that extra cash, to control the money, to basically allow pricing and the potential of their direct cuts out a lot of the middlemen, insurers, etc., stuff like that. So there's a benefit to it. Now, there's also some negatives to that as well. Sometimes it's good to have an insurer that can pre-negotiate as well. But you've seen with a lot of these insurance prices, they're getting high, which is then forcing the insurance monthly amount up, and it makes it tougher. And you've seen literally the Medicare number, right, for that particular next year. It goes up if there's some new innovative medication that's and the government says, yeah, we got to have this available. You'll see just that medication and the cost of it being so extreme basically going up and it being an issue, being a problem. So just to be clear, this is something that America needs. It's something that the government should continue to do. But I'm concerned Trump going into future elections because it helps the American people. Now, some of you will say, some of you will say, no, this is great because this will essentially, give the pharmaceuticals a reason to go ahead and kick Trump out. But then my question to you is, who would you replace Trump with? Like if you were to sit back, okay, so you get through the midterm elections, right? Either goes Republican or Democrat. Who would you replace him with? Because you can't use Harris. She can't finish a speech and you just get more Biden. So like, who would you replace him with that would fight the pharmaceutical companies and not lay down and get in bed with them and then the American people get screwed over again? Like, who would you replace him with? And that's something that I've started to just ask people, because the interesting thing is a lot of people don't know the basic definitions of words that they're talking about. They always push this like it's a fascist or it's a racist or it's an ist, right, over and over. But like, who would you replace him with? Right? I mean, would you replace him with Gavin Newsom? He's kind of a failed state. You know what I mean? He's obviously not running well. Like, who would you replace him with? Like, what would be the best alternative? Bernie? Bernie's not going to be president. He's too old. He can't do that position. I mean, I'm amazed he's been able to stick in that position at that place for as long as he has. I'm amazed he hasn't had some sort of competitor pop in. So I guess from my perspective, like, just thinking about that, can any of you, and I'm curious, let me see, anybody in the chat section, anybody at all, can you come up with who would be a good replacement for Trump right now? Because remember, Trump has continuously been used as the bulletproof shield to take shit from people that, basically are normally good at bulldozing over politicians. He takes shit from the Russians. He takes shit from the Chinese. He takes shit from the pharmaceuticals. He takes shit from the oil companies. He takes shit from a lot of different groups, including the banking sector at this point. As you've seen, he's had some issues there. Not to mention what happened while he was out of office and how the legal system was used. And we had some interesting judges who received some donations to their family members. You know what I mean? It's been interesting times to be a lawyer. It really has. You've kind of seen the erosion of the protections of judges being these like demigods that can't be touched. And then you realize, oh, there's a lot of fraud going on there. There's a lot of, So I'm seeing people say Marco, Ted Cruz, JD Vance. Yeah, I get it. But those are all Republicans. Can you think of one Democrat at all that would be a good pick? And I guess that's my point. You have to understand big pharma is going to literally get together their nonprofits, their community companies to go ahead and fight this thing and convince people that it's a bad idea for government to demand cheaper drug prices be available for purchase for cash, to the American people. Obviously, it's a good thing, right? Obviously, it has its place. But can you think of who you would replace Trump with? And let's see. I see Run AOC Run, Josh Shapiro, 10 on Vacation Cruise needs to go away. Maybe I need to see their platform. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Nobody knows what their platforms are. The weirdest thing is if you took two Democrats or a Republican and a Democrat, and you had them just go by bullet points as to how they'd fix an issue, right? You would very clearly see which way and which direction you go. And then the funny thing is some Republicans would vote Democrats, some Democrats would vote Republican, etc. But the problem now, as you know, unfortunately, is that these are all party systems. It's not about voting in the best candidate. It's about voting in whichever party is going to do the least harm to your existence as an American. And that's a really sad thing, because when that became the thing, you lost your power to decide the outcome of who you wanted to pick and why. Because when it became all about the party over the people, you lost your power to basically dictate what should happen going forward. All right, so keep in mind, very powerful people will be against Trump going into the future. Big Pharma's not going to be happy. But again, keep in mind, this is beginning the rolling movement for Trump to come out with his, medical insurance version of Obamacare to replace the marketplace with something else. It's a good start. It is a good start. But again, I don't know what he has planned. Nobody really does when it comes to future medical insurance. It's something he's always been weak on. It's something he hasn't really had a plan for. It's something that's in the contemplative phase, etc. But at the end of the day, I think it will be quite interesting. I think it will. I see John Fetterman. John Fetterman would be a good option. I think that would be okay. Yeah, I think he's definitely got a little bit more on top of understanding, It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But either way, I'm excited to see what happens with this program. I'm excited to see what additional drugs get added to it. Please check it out. It's TRUMPRX.GOV. See if there's a medication on there that would be helpful for you. I will catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful day. Attorney Walter Not, and we will go from there. Please remember to like. Please remember to subscribe. And I will catch you later tonight. Thank you so much, everybody. Have fun, and we'll rock and roll from there. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.